Hi, I'm Corey Joe WCJ and welcome to Commander Class episode 63. In this video we will be going over artifact tokens. Now when I say this is different from tokens themselves. I am breaking it down to be more accurate and to kind of make sure that people don't get confused. The best way to do that is by narrowing down as far as I can kind of make it. Now don't get me wrong, there's some of these I could make full-fledged videos on, but I thought it would be the best doing it this way. When it comes to this video, it will be slightly different. There will be 9 categories I'll be going over and talking about each of the token artifacts. So what is a token artifact? A token artifact is pretty much a artifact, so it could be like a stone, gold, food, treasure, but it is a token version of it. Tokens I have not gone over, but pretty much it is a non-card card. They work as normal cards, but slightly bend the rules. For example, when they hit the graveyard, they then disappear, so you can't kind of get them back. And there's other cards that only matter if a permanent card or a actual card hits the graveyard. Tokens do not count. When it comes to these, none of them have a casting cost. They are usually made by other things. So there's cards that will, when they enter the battlefield, create a blank token or another token. And then there's usually cards that, like, if it's like board wipes, but you get a token for each creature you kill and stuff like that. There's many variations of making these. I will not be going over them. I will just be going over what they do. Pretty much, so if you read a card and it says it makes blank token, you now know what that token does without you thinking about it. So when it comes to the 9 tokens I'll be going over, they are blood, clue, food, gold, incubators, junk, map, power stone and treasure. When it comes to these, they have been out in various sets, so a lot of them have a lot of ways to make them, but some are very specific and only came out in 1, 2 or 3 sets, so there's not that many cards that make these tokens. So again, if you're new to the game, you might have seen some of these tokens. Some of these might be old to you, or some of these might be in sets you love or hate. So I'm going to start off with the blood token. It says tap 1 and discard a card, sack the blood token to draw a card. When it comes to this, I am not a big fan of blood tokens. I do have a 3-color vampire deck and some of them make blood tokens, but usually I just ignore the blood tokens because personally, I do not think it is worth it unless you are having a discard deck, which my vampire deck isn't. Pretty much the only reason you would want these in is if you are having a deck that matters when you discard cards, and also if you have a large amount of mana and you're looking for certain cards to pretty much filter through your own deck to get the winning hand. I also don't like that it takes so much, so you have to pay the 1, you then have to tap it, then have to discard a card to then sack the token to just draw a card. That in my head, in majority of decks, is not a good card. The fact that unless you have cards that matter when you sacrifice something, then it's okay. Or if you have a deck that only matters if you discard stuff, then it's okay. But it is pretty much 4 things you have to do just to draw a card. And I think it's one of those things when it comes to Magic the Gathering, there is way more better draw cards or way more better ways to draw your deck and stuff like that. So I think a token like this is not worth it. Secondly, we are going on to clues. They say, tap 2, sack it, draw a card. These are slightly better than bloods because you have to just pay the 2 and sack it to draw a card. However, you have to pay double the mana and also sack it. So again, if you're not building a discard deck, this is better. If you are building a discard deck, this is worse. I do like the fact that you don't have to tap it, I don't think. But again, drawing cards is so easy in this game now that it doesn't really need to be in. Clues are quite old, so that's probably why you don't see them anymore. Because of how Magic has grown, they're not necessary anymore, in my opinion. Thirdly, we are going on to the food token. It says, tap 2, sacrifice this artifact, gain 3 life. Now, when this first came out, I did not really like it. I did like the fact that it seemed pretty even to me because you're paying 2 and sacking it and tapping it to gain 3 life. Again, not a lot of life, but it does help with that little bit, especially if you have little bits of mana. It also really works well with Ashnod's Altar, because if you have a large amount of food and a large amount of tokens, you can pretty much, if someone board wipes, sacrifice all your tokens to Ashnod's Altar to perfectly pay the price to gain 3 health per one. I do like it as an ability. However, the thing that makes food tokens actually good, in my opinion, is the new sets. When it comes to sets, there's a lot of cards that matter when you get a food or sack a food or something to do with food, or when a food token's created, especially in the Lord of the Rings set. That makes this set, or makes this token, actually good. The token itself, in my opinion, okay at best. It's the cards that work around it that make food tokens quite good. Now we are going on to gold. When it comes to gold, there is a slight difference between gold and treasure, and they're pretty much seen as the same. But in my personal preference, gold is better, but it's harder to get gold than it is to get treasure. Don't worry, I'll be going over treasure very shortly. But gold says, sacrifice it, add 1 mana of any colour. This is good in my opinion, mainly for one reason. There is a lot of cards out there that don't let you tap, so the fact that you're able just to sack it to gain 1 mana is really, really good. The only downside with gold is, compared to treasure, it's so much harder to get gold, where there's so many cards out there that make you get treasure, but I can see why. It's such a small difference between the two, because treasure is just tap, sack it, gain 1 mana of any colour. Gold is just sack it. You're very, very, very rarely going to get into the thing where your gold and treasures matter, but the reason they probably are releasing more treasure cards than they are gold cards is because when that one little bit does happen, you're not screwed. Next, we are going on to Incubators. This is a really weird artifact token, but I like it. What an incubator says is, when you incubate, you play a card that says incubate X. Depending on your card, you'll get a different variation. You will get like a egg-looking artifact token that enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on them. Then when you are ready, you're able to tap 2 and flip it into its creature side, which is a 0/0 creature that enters with X 1/1 counters. These are really good because pretty much if you have it that you pretty much incubate 4, you have an egg that is technically a 4/4, but when you desperately need it, you can tap 2, flip it and get a 4/4, but rather if it's in its egg stage or its creature stage, you're able to proliferate, which makes you add additional counters on. You could double the counters depending on what cards you have on the field. You can make this get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then when you're ready, tap 2 to flip it. Now the only downside about these, or the thing I don't like about these, is it only came out in 1 or 2 sets. There's not that many cards of them. There is a commander that mattered with these that I did like, but my problem with this deck, I would love to build a big massive deck that the whole thing is spaced around this, but there doesn't seem to be enough cards, in my opinion, that matters when it comes to these. But I did really think it was a good card, or a good thought process, and hopefully they come back to it. I don't think they will, but they might. Next, we are going on to junk artifact tokens. These are officially, as of recording of this, not technically out. These are going to be coming out in the Fallout set, where they're going to release 4 Commander Fallout decks with, I think, possibly only 1 having these cards. But they did release what they do, and they say, tap, sacrifice this artifact, exile the top card of your library, you can play that this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. This, I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate for. I do not like playing the way where you exile the top cards of your library and can only play them. People do see it as like a secondary hand, but I think it kind of gets the cards in your hand to become useless because they disappear. The fact that you can undo it on your turn is also okay, but I'm not a big fan of these. However, there is a lot of good decks that work well with these, and they are quite powerful cards. Junk is just not the way I personally play, but I can see people loving this. Unfortunately, when it comes to this, so far, there's only 1, possibly 4 decks all coming out at once. so it doesn't seem like it's going to be a really big huge thing. However, there's a lot of red decks that matter when it comes to exiling cards and playing them, so it will probably give them a good benefit of the doubt. Now we'll be looking at maps. Maps are an artifact token, and it says tap 1 and it sacrifice this token, target creature you control explores. Activate only as a sorcery. When it comes to these, I'm finding it depends on the deck you're building. I'm not a big fan of Explore. It has got a lot better when it came to Ixalan Caverns of Lost Souls or whatever. There is a lot of good ways to use these and a lot of good cards when it comes to it, and they are a thing that I constantly see come back every few years. But again, it's just not my play type. So if you actually think maps are good, I would love to hear people's advice in the comments down below. Now we're going on to the final stretch with the last two, this one being Power Stones. When it comes to these, they only came out in 1 or 2 sets last year, I think the end of 2022. I'm not the biggest fan of these. Power Stones say, tap, add a waste, this mana can only be spent to cast non-artifact spells. Now that is quite a good ability, but the Power Stones are hard to get and kind of not the best in my opinion. I've never actually seen anyone really use them, or if they do, they only have a card that necessarily makes them, that they would rather use the card's second ability or the card's ability, and it just happens to come in with a Power Stone. Now, before I played Commander, I did play Modern, and I liked the original Power Stone. I did have 4 in a deck, mainly because they all then tapped for 4 colorless waste on mana. I can't remember what the card did, but when they were announcing the set, I was really happy when they announced Power Stones, and then I seen them. There's not many ways to get them. They are good, but only in the right decks, and I don't think we'll be seeing them rather for a long time or ever again. And then finally, treasures. When it comes to treasures, they're pretty much the same as gold, but the only difference is you have to tap them. Now, when it comes to treasures, there is a plethora of ways to get them, and so many cards actually make them. I'm pretty sure they are the most common artifact token you will see in this game. They are very, very powerful and help out a lot. They are probably the best when it comes to this. Not power-wise, pretty much if gold had as many versions of them or equal versions of them, gold would slightly be better. But since gold is hard to make, treasure is probably the best and most powerful artifact token to make. If you disagree, please let me know in the comments down below. While you're there, remember to like, subscribe, and follow me on all my social media. But as always, I have last week's Commander class here, a playlist with all the Commander classes here, and a subscribe button here, which again, loving making these videos. Please help me out as much as you possibly can, and I will see you all in the next video.